It is the John Phillips Show. Johnny is on vacation this week, so it's Randy Wang flying solo. The phone number to join us is 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. You can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and search for the John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. When you hear the term diversion, what do you think about? Do you think of maybe a 16-year-old that gets caught shoplifting at CVS and instead of going to juvie, they figure out some kind of therapy program? Maybe when you think of the word diversion, you think of somebody that for the first time ever has been arrested for possession of drugs, and we want to get them into a treatment program instead of prison because we think we can treat this medical issue. You may have heard of mental health diversion. New laws that have been passed over the last few years in California make it so if you argue that your client has a mental illness, and it could be any mental illness, we're talking about ADHD, and it's up to the prosecutors to prove that it didn't contribute to the crime you committed, you could be eligible for mental health diversion. But in San Francisco, this term of diversion is being pushed to its complete insanity because of a hit-and-run case from almost 5 years ago now where two women were murdered in the drunk driving hit and run of a 91-time felon who just applied, thanks to his public defender, an application for diversion. For more on this horrible case, let's go to KTVU, Fox 2 in the Bay.
Concern over a deadly DUI case in San Francisco. The suspect in this case, a repeat offender who was out on parole when he allegedly hit.
How many stories have we done just in the last few weeks where the criminal in question who did something horrible was out on parole? What I don't understand, and I understand the whole concept of qualified immunity, I don't care for it, but shouldn't these parole boards have to be held responsible for putting dangerous people out on our streets early? Because it killed two innocent women.
When he allegedly hit and killed two pedestrians on New Year's Eve of 2020. Attorneys for the suspect are pushing for the judge to divert him into drug treatment. New at 10, KTV's Betty.
This guy is a 30-year criminal rap sheet. Really? We're going to push him into diversion after he was let out of prison yet again and hit and ran and killed two women?
New at 10, KTV's Betty Yu spoke to people hoping the judge hears their pleas for justice. Betty?
Greg, these protesters emphasize that these two deaths were preventable, caused by a repeat offender who they say shouldn't have been out on the streets. They are warning that diversion could reverse progress on public safety made here in San Francisco.
You would think the whole concept of diversion would apply to somebody's first time committing an offense, not after 91 felonies and 30 years of criminal activity. Hasn't this person shown us over and over and over again that they cannot be rehabilitated? But of course, we always want to look at every situation in that incarceration is the last option, even for somebody who took two innocent lives.
My message is to you, Judge Beggar, for you to do your job.
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing involved with this. The judge who is involved with this case is one of the worst in San Francisco, notorious for slapping people on the wrist and giving lower sentences and thinking of diversion programs as being a great idea for people who definitely don't deserve it.
My message is to you, Judge Beggar, for you to do your job, to keep us safe.
A vocal group rallied outside the Hall of Justice, holding signs and photos of Hanako Abe and Elizabeth Platt, two women killed on New Year's Eve in 2020 by a driver with a long criminal history. Troy McAllister is charged with vehicular manslaughter and other crimes. Prosecutors say he was high on meth and alcohol.
Oh, that's exactly the kind of person you want behind the wheel on New Year's Eve in a crowded city.
Prosecutors say he was high on meth and alcohol and driving a stolen car when he ran a red light and hit another vehicle. And then
why is this only going to trial now 5 years later? We got to move this system a little faster. If the argument is, well, he needs to be treated for his addiction, it's been 5 years.
And then fatally struck Abe and Platt in a downtown crosswalk. He was on parole at the time. Some demonstrators.
Shouldn't that immediately mean that this person goes back to prison? You're out on parole. You violate that parole. You kill two people. Why is there even a conversation here?
He was on parole at the time. Some demonstrators are now calling for the recall of Superior Court Judge Michael Beggart, who oversees drug court and will decide whether McAllister qualifies for diversion.
The biggest problem that public safety advocates have, specifically in San Francisco, is while things used to be different a few years ago, and you had Chesa Boudin not wanting to file charges, you had SFPD way more understaffed than they are now, and this general idea of defund the police, we don't want to charge people with crimes, it really didn't work out. Even London Breed had to turn around and realize that that approach wasn't working.
And less tolerant of all the bullshit that has destroyed our city.
Not turned around quick enough to save her re-election campaign, but Chesa Boudin got recalled. She appointed Brooke Jenkins to be the district attorney. So now you have police that are able to make the arrests, including of the illegal alien Honduran drug dealers. They're the ones passing out the fentanyl in the Tenderloin. And you have Brooke Jenkins filing the charges. But where San Francisco has had a problem is in the judges still slapping people on the wrist, still buying this nonsense that the drug dealers are victims of human trafficking, and sometimes juries not wanting to convict these people.
Some demonstrators are now calling for the recall of Superior Court Judge Michael Beggart, who oversees drug court and will decide whether McAllister qualifies for diversion, a process that allows certain defendants to avoid criminal prosecution.
How does this qualify for diversion? Somebody who has committed 91 felonies. Someone who has been in and out of prison for 30 years. If this is legally allowed to be put into the category of diversion, then these laws are full of nonsensical loopholes. And there are certain public safety advocates that have been talking extensively about this. Notably, Sacramento County Sheriff Jim Cooper has been saying, and it was a bill that did not make it out of committee this year in the assembly, that would have cut down on some of these loopholes for mental health diversion, for all of these programs that are letting people get away with crimes because they're blaming it on what? This guy shouldn't be held accountable for what he did because he was on meth when he did it? That's not how this is supposed to work.
A process that allows certain defendants to avoid criminal prosecution by completing court-supervised treatment or rehabilitation program.
While there are certain people who should be granted diversion and ultimately given the opportunity to rebuild their lives, Troy McAllister has demonstrated that despite being given that opportunity multiple times, he has continued to pose a threat to San Franciscans, and we believe he needs to be in jail.
I would imagine most people would say, you know, everyone deserves a second chance. Some people might say everyone deserves a third chance. Who is the constituency that says people need a 10th chance, an 11th chance, a 12th chance, a 30th chance? At what point do we give up and realize this person is a danger to all of us and they do not belong in our society? And I don't care how much we want to complain about how much it costs to keep somebody in there. If you look up at how much destruction, whether it's monetarily or things that you cannot put a price on, like 2 lives, we are better off paying for somebody to be in prison for the rest of their lives.
Blueprint for a Better San Francisco says the city has made progress since voters recalled Chesa Boudin, crediting current DA Brooke Jenkins for supporting public safety.
Troy McAllister has been charged with 91 felonies over the course of his multi-decades criminal career here in San Francisco. And
why was he out in 2020 to begin with? What parole board looked at this guy and said, yes, he is safe to reenter our society? And that is where, while you can't put Prop 47 specifically on someone like Gavin Newsom, because he was only lieutenant governor then, which means nobody was paying attention to him, and it's something ultimately the voters passed. Prop 57 also, Jerry Brown pushed that thing very hard, and the voters said yes to it. But when it comes to the appointees to the parole board, that is something that Gavin Newsom is directly responsible for.
Accountability.
And I can't even tell you how many times we do some horrific story, and the little detail that's in there is this person was already convicted of crimes, was in prison, and was let out early by the parole board, thanks to Gavin Newsom.
Troy McAllister has been charged with 91 felonies over the course of his multi-decades criminal career here in San Francisco. And we don't think that someone should be given infinite chances to ultimately, correct course.
In a statement to KTVU, the deputy public defender who represents McAllister said, "We have always believed that this case was overcharged, and we have..."
He killed 2 people in a hit and run while high on meth. Well, I guess public defender got a public defender. That is the job they are supposed to do. But how much weight are we putting into this public defense?
And we have always intended to seek diversion.
Of course.
Study after study shows that targeted, heavily supervised treatment programs like the kind offered via diversion are less expensive and promote long-term safety far more than incarceration.
I don't know. I feel like if you ask the average person, even in San Francisco, they'd want incarceration for this guy. This is a danger to all of us, a danger to society. Diversion ain't gonna cut it. But is this judge going to go along with this? Hopefully not, especially if enough people start raising their voices. And if he does, yeah, maybe it's time. Maybe we have to start going for the drastic measure of recalling judges who are playing into this nonsensical ideology where nobody goes to prison for anything.
Judges in San Francisco have exploited the diversion courts so that there's essentially no consequences to committing felonies in San Francisco.
And you know who's aware of this? The criminal element.
Public safety has been a priority in San Francisco for the last several years, and without a proper working criminal justice system in the courts, we have no public safety.
Now, due to a procedural delay today, the hearing has been postponed to October 28th. The group says they will be back out here on the steps, then urging Judge Beggert not to grant diversion. Greg?
Yeah, certainly a case we will continue to follow there in San Francisco. Betty, thank you.
We will continue to follow this story, and coming up at 1 o'clock, we'll be talking to Susan Dyer Reynolds of the Voice of San Francisco about this story and some of the other nonsense that's been going on in San Francisco. The phone number to join us is 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. You can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. The phone number to join us, 800-222-5222. You can also email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Greg writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 91 times, shame on the California justice system. Maybe on his way to wherever he's being diverted, he can pick up a government-sponsored and provided drug kit. I'm sure he probably has had one a time or two. Let's go to the phones and go to Paul in San Francisco. Paul, hello.
Yes, I'm sure Judge Beggert has a parking place when he goes to his job as a judge. Maybe he should take the bus once in a while, ride public transit, and maybe he should go through the Tenderloin in San Francisco and see some of the criminality there. Maybe that might alter his ultra-left idealistic attitudes about the world.
if this is one of the guys that's responsible for constantly slapping drug dealers in the tenderloin on the wrist, he should have to sleep in the tenderloin for a night and see what that's like.
Yeah, a San Francisco liberal, somebody who hasn't been mugged yet.
Thanks for the call, Paul. Appreciate it. Let's go to Stan in Orange. Stan, hello.
Yeah, hey, Mr. Wang. This whole thing, I'm a retired policeman, and I saw a lot of this diversion stuff, which is quite honestly is very frustrating. I mean, I can see it to a point, but some people need to be imprisoned. I think you've referenced that yourself. I mean, how many chances do you give somebody when they kill somebody? Diversion is not a chance that they get. It's just very frustrating as a citizen and as a retiree. But as an example, a couple of years ago, a good friend of mine, he was due to be married in 2 weeks. Walking 6 o'clock in the evening, walking down the street, and was mowed down by an illegal alien, 4-time drunk driver. It killed her, seriously injured him. Fortunately, it happened in a small county, so they threw the book at him, and he's doing 25 years to life. But the DA pulled him aside during the sentencing and said, you've got to realize you are in California. This guy's probably going to get paroled out in a couple of years. Just be aware of that. And a lot of this comes down to it's us, the voters. I mean, you referenced it yourself, Prop 47, Prop 57. We, not me or probably not you, we're voting for this stuff to let these people out for these diversion programs, for the politicians that pass all this stuff. So shame on us. It's stuff you got to think about. But diversion for killing 2 people, I mean, it's insane. I'm sorry.
I think you make a whole lot of sense, Stan. Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it, and I'm sorry about what happened to your friend. That's just awful, and that's the kind of crap that is unacceptable. The phone number, if you'd like to join us, is 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. A 91-time felon who's been given chances for 25 years, was out on parole New Year's Eve 2020, where he got behind the wheel while high on meth and hit and ran and murdered 2 women. The public defender is asking the judge for diversion in this case, so he can get some treatment for his addiction. My question to you at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222 is this: do you think it is appropriate to offer diversion in this case? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. We'll get your calls coming up next. Get on the line right now. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. In New Year's Eve of 2020, a man on parole who had a 25-year criminal career got high on meth, got behind the wheel, hit and ran, and killed 2 women. He's finally going to trial, charged with manslaughter, and the public defender is asking the judge if this longtime career criminal can get diversion for his addiction. 91 felonies this guy has had. He killed 2 people, was out on parole, and the public defender is asking the judge for diversion in this case. Do you think this makes any sense? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Do you think diversion is appropriate in this case? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Let's start with Helen in Newark. Helen, hello.
Hi, thank you. My main point is I'd like to see more attention paid to these parole boards. Obviously, the guy shouldn't even have been out with that type of record, and then for the parole board to say, okay, go on out and sin no more, and then here he commits these crimes. The main purpose is prison to protect to protect citizens, not to rehabilitate or coddle people. So I think I'd like to see more emphasis or attention paid to who are these parole board people and why are they held accountable? It's their fault, besides the whole system. I don't blame the public defender as far as asking for this ridiculous thing, because if it's there in his power to ask, I would hope that the judge would laugh in his face. But that's getting in the weeds. So that's my main topic. Thank you.
Well, I think you make a whole lot of sense. Thanks so much for the call, Helen. Appreciate it. And right now, there isn't a whole lot of accountability for these parole boards. And because of laws like Prop 57, which means you're almost automatic half-time off as soon as you get sentenced, and all of these good behavior credits and declassifying all kinds of violent felonies to nonviolent, and then with AB 109, which made it so we don't want anybody in prison that's quote-unquote nonviolent, even when the thing you did should be counted as violent, like domestic violence. It's right there in the term. What we have seen is a failure at every level to keep dangerous people away from society. If you want to rehabilitate them, all for that, but then actually rehabilitate them. But slapping people on the wrist over and over and over again because we believe incarceration is bad hasn't really worked out, has it? 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to Morris in Studio City. Morris, hello.
Yes, this problem is not from now. The prison system was built in the 60s. We have an overpopulace of people that have migrated here, criminals. When ICE offered to go after the criminals in prison, LA City with the sanctuary cities refused to release them. There's not enough beds to hold all the criminals. So if you notice, most of the penalties is by fines, wherever they can collect monetary money, and that's it. And the end result is these people that should be incarcerated are out on the streets. And until they make a change, the taxpayer money it's just misused all around, like this Proposition 50. Several $100 million could go to build more prisons. These criminals are out on the street. They're out driving drunk. They got drugs. And it's going to continue. I don't know what changes is going to happen. And it's the politician who we elect to go in and represent us. And again, I've called in the past, they need to cut their pay, too, because most of them aren't worth it. They're not worth it, what they're getting. And nothing is going to change. I just don't see it in my lifetime. So all these police chases every night. These people got criminal records. This is not the first time. In most cases, they've been in a police chase. In and out for stolen vehicles, and nothing is done about the slap on the wrist.
Oh, you're totally right about that one, Morris, including there was a recent chase that we just covered where grand theft, I think you get cited for now. Grand Theft Auto is a cite and release. It makes no sense. Thanks so much for the call, Morris. Appreciate it. Let's go to Jeff in Vacaville. Jeff, hello.
Hello. Just want to make two comments regarding this concept here of diversion. One, the judges who award, and there's always other factors, but these are county programs that are essentially commission-based. The more people that are in a diversion program, the more money flows into the county, whether it's state dollars, federal dollars. So there is some incentive for the county judges to award it. Secondly, a few callers ago, someone commented about voter responsibility. I'm here in California. We voted, and with a good number passed Proposition 36, which was to recriminalize many, such as the shoplifting and vandalism. And our state governor decided, well, he didn't want to fund it, even though the voters approved it. So even when we win it at the ballot, it doesn't mean we get progress.
That's a really, really good point. And what's going on with the lack of funding for Prop 36, something that if there ever was a mandate at the ballot box, something that passed by over 70%, you think the elected officials in Sacramento would pay attention to that. And if they're not, Well, then we have to do our job as voters and hold every single one of them accountable. If they're not funding Prop 36, then they do not belong in Sacramento, and maybe we could see some change there. It's definitely going to be a topic that's talked about in the governor's race. Who actually supported Prop 36 and who's pretending that they supported Prop 36, like, I don't know, Katie Porter. Thanks so much for the call, Jeff. Appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. A 25-year felon, career criminal, was out on parole in 2020 when he got behind the wheel high on meth and killed 2 women. He's charged with manslaughter. The public defender in this case is asking the judge for diversion to treat his addiction. Do you think that's appropriate? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go to William in the South Bay. William, hello.
Yeah, how's it going? I have a couple things I wanted to say. So first of all, diversion, that's only supposed to be a program for misdemeanor offenders. Felonies aren't even supposed to be applicable for that, especially no less a violent felony like manslaughter. And so, and the other thing I want to say is, also with the squandering of our taxpayer dollars, leading to the inability to house prison inmates. And I actually know somebody who's in the homeless housing program or whatever. And it's a couple, a boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're in a motel room. Okay. And the state pays that motel $20,000, not per room, but per person, a month to house them in some crappy motel. And it's like, that's more money than a mortgage costs. So, like,
well, not only that, it's way more money than what the number that Gavin Newsom loves to tout as the reason he has to close all the prisons is. That's way more than $136,000 a year, the cost of imprisoning somebody.
I know. I did the math on my friend's motel room. $40,000 a month for one room, and it's like they were already over $100,000 in just a few months.
Well, this is how we got to $20 billion missing over the last 5 years and nothing to account for it. And a lot of that money would have been better used making sure the prisons weren't overcrowded, because what do you know, while you can't always have a causation with correlation, you can definitely see the explosion of the homeless in California correlating with when we started closing the prisons. Thanks so much for the call, William. Appreciate it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to Rick in Marina Del Rey. Rick, hello.
Hey, I think this guy should absolutely get diversion, and he should be working for the county supervisors. I think he should be put as staff of Holly Mitchell's office because he's got insight as to crime, and he can advise them, and he should work every day in the office and let the county supervisors have him in their offices so they know what it's like to be around one of these guys. I think whoever lets them off, he should work in their office, and he can go every day, clock in, be the chief of staff, and then they can decide whether it was a good decision.
That is an interesting idea. Thanks so much for the call, Rick. Appreciate it. Let's go to Tim in Lakewood. Tim, hello.
Hey, good afternoon. How you doing? Well, I'll tell you what, all these bleeding hearts love to talk in silly little rhymes. Go all the way back to the OJ case. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And you got these people now, you can't get well in a cell. Well, guess what? I submit this retort. You can't do crime if you're doing time.
That is something that's somehow lost on a lot of people, including our former progressive district attorney, George Gascon. If you remove somebody from society, they are not able to commit other crimes. But that seems to be lost on so many people. Now, I don't think everybody, but definitely a lot of important people.
People don't realize that some incarceration is for punishment. Okay, if you rob a bank, you do 5-10 years, that's fine. You might never rob a bank again. But if you murder somebody, guess what? You're put away not only for punishment, but also to protect society from you.
I think that's something that is lost on so many people that are in charge of how long somebody stays in prison. And that's something that if we don't have the right people thinking about that, we've got to get the right people in there that do think about that. Thanks so much for the call, Tim. Appreciate it. Let's go to Tom in Costa Mesa. Tom, hello.
Hey, Randy. What happened to Nathan Hochman? I haven't heard squat. I mean, he was going to do all this. Everybody's going to be in jail, and now I'm hearing that people are getting out. They're not going to jail for things. What's going on with this guy?
Well, as far as what Hochman's been doing in Los Angeles County, I will say that he has been applying Prop 36, and apparently the jail population in Los Angeles County has gone up to the point where now the county doesn't have a plan to close the jail. So there is movement there. A lot of these things, you can only do so much as a local DA when it comes to state laws that are the ones that govern how long someone spends in prison. So he can file the charges, but if the judges aren't playing along and the juries aren't playing along, it's the same situation in San Francisco. They get a good DA in Brooke Jenkins, but when the judges want to give everybody diversion and citations, there's only so much you can do.
Wow, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. Plus, there's probably not a lot of defense attorneys. It's just expensive to carry the cases forward. So it's just weird. I feel bad, but what can you do?
Thanks so much for the call, Tom. Appreciate it. I would say, Hochman definitely has the right message when he's on the podium. He was at a press conference this morning advocating for Gavin Newsom to sign this bill that would crack down on the sale of stolen copper wire. Seeing that is good, but, could he be more forceful in charging? He can only charge what is brought to him. And when we have such a depleted police department, not just at LAPD, but also in LA County Sheriff's, you have to be able to arrest these people before we could charge them. So there are a lot of different legs to the stool. But, we'll see in the next year or so how things are going. I think it's making a small difference. The thing that I heard, the thing that really convinced me that, okay, Hochman is at least doing something, was that LA County had this plan for years and years and years to close Men's Central Jail. In fact, in 2020, they ditched a plan they had paid for years to replace Men's Central Jail with a state-of-the-art mental health facility. And they said, no, we're just going to close it with nothing to replace it. And they were coming up with all these plans to decarcerate and put all of these people who are in jail into the community. And as of the last hearing they had on this a few months ago, the people inside the county jail system said, well, we're going to have a problem decarcerating because Prop 36 and Nathan Hochman mean we have way more people in the jail system going in than we can take out. And at least that's something. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to Ralph in Whittier. Ralph, hello.
Hey, John, everything you've just said. Last Tuesday, there's a Board of Supervisor meeting. Hochman appears, is trying to get some of his budget and his items restored from the curtailments, presents the reasons why. He didn't get to finish his presentation because they cut him off. The responses he got, it's funny, somebody mentioned Holly Mitchell, the responses he got from her was, well, maybe if you spent a little bit more of your office's time and budget on prevention programs, and maybe if you didn't spend so much time and effort motioning to hold juveniles over to adult court, maybe there's something we could do. So basically what they told them is, too bad, so sad. And then as far as what you brought up right now about Men's Central Jail, you've heard Alex talk about that for I don't know how long. The board still wants to close Men's Central Jail. They don't want to build a replacement. There was a proposal made to reopen East Facility at Wayside and to reopen Mira Loma, but the board doesn't want to do that. And on top of that, you've got the board wants to shut down Sylmar and Los Padrinos, which means you'll have no juvenile facilities. And those facilities are housing 20, 23, 24-year-olds who are state prison returnees that were sentenced when they were juveniles, who who are back here in other cases or other motion hearings.
Oh, it's
And
not
they
only
wanna
that, Ralph. There's a whole bunch of people in those facilities that were the juveniles that former DA George Gascon refused to try as adults. So you have murderers in there.
Yes. And the thing is that what you're seeing, it's not as blatant as it was with Alex, but the board is starting to do to Hochman what they did to Alex by cutting his budget, cutting his items. They don't like that he's fighting them on not closing those facilities without replacements. There's a serious amount of pushback. And I think you're going to start seeing more stuff out there. The problem you have is that the local media, it's people like you that are covering this. The local media just will not get involved. And it's not that hard for them to find out. It's not a whole lot of work.
I think you make a really, really strong point, and we'll try to do what we can here to highlight it. Thanks so much for the call. As always, Ralph, appreciate it. If you'd like to email us, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Will writes in and says, this judge, no bail Beggart, fits the look of a lib wannabe do-gooder who we all know worships the altar of Satan, a.k.a. the DNC. What a filthy lowlife POS, and not just that meth junkie killer, Troy McAllister. Takes garbage cans like no bail beggar to facilitate crimes committed by those by the meth junkie. Let's go to Steve in Fairfield. Steve, hello.
Hello?
Hey.
Yeah.
You're on the air.
Oh, okay. Hi. See what I did earlier? Okay. Well, I was just thinking back to the 50s and the 60s. And they had what was called indeterminate sentencing. And basically, you had to learn a trade and rehabilitate yourself and prove that you were capable of going out there and doing this. And a lot of guys, I don't think it was the same for heavy-duty felons. And one of the things that was happening at the same time back then was in Switzerland, their justice system was petty crimes and other things like that. You get to stay in your home with your family. You had to go stay somewhere else and prove, and still continue to go to work. And I don't know what the recidivism rate was, but I never heard a whole lot of crime going on in Switzerland.
I got to tell you, the idea of somebody should be fully rehabilitated before they go back into society and have a pathway for success and maybe some actual career skills so they don't have to work at Urban Alchemy. I don't know why we're not doing that. Thanks so much for the call. When we come back, Susan Dyer Reynolds of the Voice of San Francisco joins us. It's The John Phillips Show.